The winter of 1794 gripped the shores of Digby, Nova Scotia, with unrelenting ferocity. The town sat perched at the edge of the Annapolis Basin, its docks frozen in a cage of ice and the land blanketed in snow. Yet even in the desolation of the season, there were whispers among the townsfolk, rumors of unholy shadows moving in the woods, of cries carried on the wind, and of a stranger wandering the frozen countryside. It was beneath the skeletal branches of an ancient spruce, far from the warmth of hearth and home, that Sir Aldrich de Marne, the last knight of an order long since forgotten, knelt in the snow. His once gleaming armor was dulled by years of battle, the plates battered and his cloak in tatters. His breath came in ragged gasps, his chest rising and falling with the effort of simply existing. Beside him lay the shattered remains of his sword, its hilt still faintly glowing in the pale moonlight. The blade, forged in holy fire centuries ago, had been his only weapon against the creeping darkness that had plagued the region. But now it was broken, like him. He pressed a hand against the wound in his side, where dark blood seeped through the layers of fabric and mail. The wound burned with unnatural cold, a mark left by the creature he had faced the night before. "It ends here," Aldrich whispered to the empty night. His voice was a fragile echo, lost to the howling wind. Digby was no stranger to hardship. Its people were fishermen and laborers, their lives shaped by the sea and the land's unforgiving winters. But the past month had brought terror that no storm could match. It began with the cattle. Farmers awoke to find their livestock dead, their bodies drained of life, eyes staring into the void. Then came the disappearances. First, it was a trapper who ventured too deep into the forest. Then, a child who strayed too far from home. Finally, whole families vanished, their houses left undisturbed but empty, save for faint traces of frost that never melted. The townsfolk turned to prayer, to superstition, and to each other. But nothing stopped the encroaching fear. Then came the stranger, walking out of the forest one bitter morning in early December. Aldrich de Marne had arrived silently, his eyes weary, his posture hunched but purposeful. He asked no questions and gave no answers, only requesting shelter for one night and leaving before dawn. But the rumors followed him. Some said he was a priest, others a soldier. A few whispered that he was something more, a man out of time, bearing the weight of ancient secrets. In truth, Aldrich was all those things and none. He had come to Digby chasing the scent of darkness, the same malevolent force he had hunted across continents and years. It had drawn him here, to the edge of the world, for one final confrontation. The battle had begun in the woods near Bear River, under the light of a full moon. Aldrich had tracked the creature to its lair, a frozen hollow beneath the roots of an ancient tree. It was a wraith of ice and shadow, its form shifting like smoke, its eyes burning with a cold blue flame. Aldrich had fought with the ferocity of a man who had nothing left to lose. The creature struck with talons of frost and screams that turned the air to shards, but Aldrich pressed on, wielding his holy blade with precision and fury. The fight raged for hours, until the night drove the sword deep into the creature's heart. There was a blinding flash of light, a scream that shook the earth, and then silence. But the victory came at a cost. The wraith's final strike had left him mortally wounded, and his sword, unable to withstand the strain, shattered in his hand. Now, alone and dying, Aldrich waited for the inevitable. The wind carried the sound of crunching snow, faint but unmistakable. Aldrich's eyes flickered open, his hand instinctively moving toward the broken hilt at his side. A figure emerged from the swirling snow, cloaked in thick furs. A lantern hung from their hand, its light soft and golden, cutting through the storm like a beacon. "Who goes there?" Aldrich rasped, his voice weak. The figure stopped a few paces away and lowered their hood. It was a woman, her face pale and ageless, her eyes filled with an otherworldly calm. "Peace, knight," she said, her voice soothing. "I am here to ease your passing." Aldrich narrowed his eyes. "Ease my passing? Are you death, then? Come to claim me?" "No," she replied, kneeling beside him. "I am a watcher. I have seen your struggles, your sacrifices. You have carried the weight of the world for so long, Aldrich de Marne. It is time to rest." The watcher placed a hand on his shoulder, and suddenly, the cold and pain faded. Aldrich found himself standing in a place of warmth and light, the snow and storm replaced by a verdant meadow under a clear blue sky. In the distance, he saw figures walking toward him. He recognized them immediately, his comrades from the Argent Blades. They smiled at him, their faces filled with joy and pride. "Welcome, Aldrich," said Sir Geraint, his oldest friend and the first to fall. Aldrich felt tears welling in his eyes as he embraced them. For the first time in decades, the weight of his burdens lifted, replaced by a sense of profound peace. "You have done well," said Lady Alara, her voice like a melody. "Your fight is over." "But the darkness?" Aldrich asked, his voice trembling. "Who will protect the world?" "It will endure," Geraint said. "As it always has. Others will rise to take your place. Rest now, my friend." The Watcher stood nearby, her expression serene. "It is time," she said softly. The vision faded, and Aldrich found himself once more beneath the ancient spruce. The storm had quieted, the wind now a gentle whisper. The Watcher still knelt beside him, her lantern glowing faintly. "What you saw was a gift," she said. "A glimpse of the peace that awaits you." Aldrich nodded, his breathing shallow. "I have fought for so long," he whispered. "I do not know how to stop." The Watcher smiled. "You already have. Rest now, knight. Your duty is done." As the light of the lantern dimmed, Aldrich closed his eyes. His final breath was soft, a sigh that rose into the still night air and disappeared. When the townsfolk of Digby found Aldrich's body the next morning, they carried him to the churchyard and laid him to rest beneath the ancient spruce. They buried him with the hilt of his broken sword, marking his grave with a simple inscription. "Here lies Sir Aldrich de Marne, the last knight, protector of the light." For generations, the people of Digby told the story of the knight who gave his life to banish the darkness from their land. Each Christmas Eve, they lit a lantern at his grave, its light a symbol of hope and a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage and sacrifice could prevail. And though the world moved on, the legend of Aldrich de Marne endured, a beacon in the long winter nights of Nova Scotia.